At Starbound, we tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices or AI garbage. What's HFY without humanity? Subscribe to keep it this way. I'm Daniel Pierce. Now, let's begin. Sergeant Corinne Diamond stood with her feet shoulder-width apart, hands clasped behind her back. She centered herself in Admiral Hesperus's office, a space so large its far bulkheads hazed into the distance. The polished deck plates mirrored the violet and gold nebula bloom beyond the wall-sized viewport. Her straight black and squared shoulders formed a posture so ingrained it was her body's resting state. Before her, the Admiral's pressurized containment throne hummed, a self-contained world of dense sailing fluid and crushing gravity. Inside, the dense, knotted bioformation of Hesperus, in all, formed a dark nucleus against the throne's internal soft green bioluminescent nodes. Sergeant Diamond. A low voice vibrated from the throne's external vocalizer like stones grinding underwater. You concluded your last 3 assignments in under a standard ship week each. I produce consistent results, Admiral, Diamond said, her gaze fixed on the throne's viewport. She kept her tone neutral, acknowledging the strangeness of being addressed by a 10-foot-tall mobile habitat. Indeed. The throne drifted to the left, revealing another figure its masthead obscured. Meet your new partner, Adjudicator Emet of the Varokian Conclave. Slender and encased in a form-fitting environmental suit the color of bone china, the being appeared two-dimensional from certain angles. A bipedal plan, a common concession to galactic architectural standards, formed its body, but a smooth, featureless plate served as its face. A low, constant hum emanated from the suit's life support. An adjudicator's testimony has settled more border disputes than our entire fleet, Hesperus added. Emet will analyze and report. Adjudicator, Diamond said with a short nod. She stepped forward and extended her hand. Sergeant Diamond, good to work with you. Emet flinched, his suit's hum pitched upward into a sharp whine. He staggered back, lifting his gloved hand palms out. To Emet, the offered hand registered as a weapon, his sensory organs, which registered the minute vibrations and biochemical signatures of living things, overloaded. The human's biology struck him like a physical force. He registered his circulatory system's thrum as a punishing rhythmic pressure in his own chest, the sharp tang of stimulants in her bloodstream like a chemical burn against his sensors. Beneath everything, a deep, resonant frequency pulsed, one his processors tagged as trained aggression. It roared dissonantly against his own being's quiet baseline. My apologies, Sergeant, Emet said, a synthesized tenor from his suit's speaker. He braced himself against a bulkhead, and his suit's atmosphere scrubbers rushed audibly. The gesture is unknown to my people. A low rumble like a collapsing undersea cavern bubbled from Hesperus's vocalizer. The Varokian people avoid physical contact, Sergeant. Right, Diamond said, lowering her hand. She watched him for a moment, her expression neutral, before turning back to the Admiral. What's the assignment? Hesperus's throne drifted back to the center of the room. A light-sculpted projection of the system resolved into view between them, showing a sparsely populated region. The Torin sector. Raiders are hitting supply convoys. Freighters stripped of processed metals, medical supplies. The Council wants us to remind the locals who's in charge. He paused. You'll take the scrap saw, small, quick, retrofitted from a hazardous salvage runner. It should suit your methods. Hesperus's primary sensor nodes, large luminous spheres drifting in the sailing fluid, swiveled to Diamond's thigh. She wore a standard-issue pulse pistol in a holster. Her hand dropped, her fingers brushing the grip. Her thumb unclipped the retention strap and reclipped in a single smooth sub-second motion. Emet's suit whined again, a high, thin note. Square away, your ship, Hesperus vibrated. An adjudicator. Tried to keep your system readouts in the green. Diamond nodded sharply and turned, her boots clicking in rhythmic cadence on the deck. Emet stood frozen for a moment longer, staring at the spot where the human stood. His internal sensors still flared with warnings from her presence. He now served alongside a walking weapon system. Exposed conduits and worn deck plates lined the Scrapsaw's bridge, where two command chairs faced a constellation of monitors and controls. Diamond moved through the pre-flight check, her left hand toggling 3 switches on a lower console, while her right thumb keyed a sequence into a side-mounted datapad. She scanned readouts, her head moving in a steady rhythm from screen to screen. Emet, meanwhile, placed a small rolled mat on the deck behind his station. He stood over it, performing slow, deliberate breathing exercises from a somatic recalibration routine. He performed the exercises to settle his own bioreadings, which spiked with static after mere minutes in the human's proximity. The ship's systems hummed around them, then a new scent cut through the scrubbed air. The bitter roasted scent had a sharp edge, flagging a chemical alert on Emmett's external suit sensors. He turned. Diamond stood by a small nutrient dispenser, a steaming mug in her hand. The dark liquid within produced the smell. "What is this substance?" Emet asked, his vocalizer tight. "Coffee," Diamond said, sipping it. "Human staple, brewed from a Terran plant's roasted seeds." The aroma intensified. Emmett's suit registered as a psychoactive alkaloid cloud. He felt a phantom echo of the jangling high-frequency buzz he registered from Diamond's own biology. He gagged, a series of distressed clicks emitting from his suit's speakers. "Computer," Emet said, his voice strained. "Activate emergency environmental filters. Purge airborne containments." "Containments?" Diamond raised a scarred eyebrow. "I am classifying the coffee under Galactic Compact Occupational Safety Mandate 34 Gamma subsection 12. Emet recited, his voice stiffening. Prohibition of airborne psychoactive alkaloids in enclosed shared workspaces. The ship's ventilation system kicked into a higher gear. Diamond watched him, her mouth a thin line. "You're citing a health and safety reg against my morning coffee?" "Your beverage contains caffeine," Emet stated, "a potent chemical stimulant. My biology is calibrated for equilibrium. Proximity to such a substance, let alone its aerosolized particulate form, disrupts my equilibrium." Diamond sipped again, long and slow, watching the smooth plate of his face. "You're a real piece of work, adjudicator." "I am the Varrokian conclave," Emet corrected. "My work is analytical. My official designation is Adjudicator Emet, assigned to peacekeeper vessel Scrapsaw." "Yeah, I got the memo," she muttered, turning back to her console. She set the mug down in a magnetic cup holder. "Just try to keep your system stable before we see some action." "I regulate my state," Emet said, while his suit's internal monitors flashed red warnings for elevated heart rate and pressure fluctuations. "I am adhering protocol." Diamond stayed silent. She stared out at the starfield, and only the hum of filtered air filled the bridge. They dropped out of a tunnel with a gut-lurching jolt. Alarms blared over the comms, a Satani bulk hauler's distress call, the operator's voice high and strained. On the main view screen, the hauler, a boxy vessel, drifted with cold engines. A pirate corvette, its angular hull covered in weapon emplacements, bore down on it, lancing out green tractor beams. Diamond's hands moved over the controls, her expression set. "Emet, open a channel to private vessel. Standard hailing frequencies." "Channel open," Emet confirmed. His own gloved hands hovered over his console as he documented the encounter, citing the Galactic Code's articles of armed intervention. Diamond leaned toward the comm pickup. "This is Peacekeeper Sergeant Corinne Diamond of the patrol vessel Scrapsaw. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded." The view screen switched to the pirate ship bridge. A grainy image appeared. The pirate captain, a hulking xylopod, stood before his own screen. His ancillary arms braced against his console, his facial sound pitch chittering. Then he saw her. He saw the silhouette, a bipedal form standing straight, 2 arms, 2 legs. The shape from stories told around flickering power cells, from corrupted data ghosts that haunted the deep networks. The deathwalker. The ruin bringer, the two-legged walker that left silence in its wake. The xylopod's chittering froze. His whole body stiffened, then sagged. He shrieked a saw-toothed, terrified sound that slammed a massive flat palm onto a console. The Corvette's running lights flickered and died. Its weapon ports retracted. On the Scrapshaw's bridge, the engine hummed. Diamond stared at her screen, blinking. Well, that was easy. Emet stared at his own screen. The outgoing transmission data fell within standard parameters. The transmission used clean frequencies, yet he witnessed a pirate captain dissolve into a glibbering wreck at the sight of his partner. A chaotic, overwhelming vibration pulsed from the other ship, making his chest cavity's membranes ache with a sympathetic thrum. The reaction exceeded anything law enforcement usually provoked. He typed a new entry in his official log, his fingers moving stiffly. Hypothesis. Subject's presence triggers an anomalous fear response. Possible causes include pheromonal agents, bioacoustic frequencies, or a low-level coercive mental field. Recommend monitoring and evaluation. All right, educator, Diamond said, her voice cutting through his thoughts. Let's go see what made them so cooperative. Emet looked from his log entry to the human in the chair beside him. He prepared to board a ship full of terrified pirates with the source of their terror. He quietly activated his suit's emergency biofeedback loop, a function used for atmospheric breaches and hard vacuum exposure. The pirate corvette's airlock hissed open, revealing a corridor filled with the crew. They huddled against the far wall. When Diamond stepped through the airlock, pulse rifle held at a low ready, they flinched as one. They looked at the deck, the ceiling, Emet, their eyes avoiding the two-legged being in their midst. The interrogation became a bizarre exercise in confession. "We did it," the xylopod captain blurted before Diamond could even ask a question. He knelt, all his limbs pressed flat against the deck. "We took the refined iridium and the nerve stabilizers from the convoy last week. It was us, all us." Diamond glanced at Emet, who stood rigidly by the airlock. "Okay," she said, turning back at the captain. "Who hired you?" The pirate stiffened. The fear still hammered at Emet's senses, but bewilderment mixed with it. "Hired?" the captain stammered. "We work for ourselves. We're pirates?" "You're well equipped for a disorganized crew," Diamond noted, gesturing with her rifle toward the bridge's sophisticated sensor array. "And you're hitting low-value targets. Your logic is flawed." The crew exchanged nervous glances. They fell over themselves to confess to the crime, but their stories about a benefactor became vague and contradictory. Anonymous client, instructors delivered via encrypted dead drops. Their instructions were to rattle cages and disrupt trade in the sector. Emet closed his optical shutters, a metaphorical gesture, and focused his external sensors, pushing through the panic signal wall to probe the crew's deeper state. The fear created a maelstrom on the surface, but underneath, he registered a steady, thrumming bass line. It matched the biosignature of soldiers following orders. Terror of Diamond radiated from them, yet their vitals held strangely stable regarding the consequences of their actions. They were merely performing a job. He pulled his senses back as a nauseous wave washed over him. The combination of their broadcast terror and the human's constant, violent biosignature made him physically ill. Quietly noted on the datapad. Log addendum. The subject's fear-inducing presence can override trained mercenary discipline. Threat level requires urgent reassessment. Unprecedented operational efficiency. Admiral Hesperus' voice boomed from the comm unit in Diamond's council spire quarters. The preliminary report calls it that. They're talking about making your methods a new module at the Peacekeeper Academy. Diamond stripped her pulse rifle on a small workbench, the components laid out in an orderly row. "I only answered a distress call, sir. They gave up." "Take the credit, Sergeant." The pirate captain's audio log shriek played on a loop in the background. "You have a perfect record. 2 calls, 2 instantaneous surrenders, both concluded peacefully with all property intact. You're a public relations miracle. An urgent chime cut through the Admiral's voice. A priority message icon flashed on Diamond's screen. It bore the Galactic Council's Oversight Committee seal. "Hold on, Admiral," she said, tapping the icon. A formal text wall bloomed into view. Diamond scanned the words, her jaw tightening. "What is that, Sergeant?" Hesperus asked. "A formal inquiry from the Oversight Committee," she said, fast-tracked by Councillor Malachi's office. She read aloud. "Citing profound concern over the abnormally high surrender rate in recent Tauran sector engagements, and in light of recently leaked intelligence regarding emergency black market coercive mental platforms." She trailed off, then continued. "The committee formally requests Sergeant Corinne Diamond undergo a full-spectrum evaluation to confirm compliance with the coercive mental techniques clause of the ancient Precursor Monuments Treaty." The comm unit went silent. The shrieking pirate captain's loop sound cut off. When Hesperus spoke again, his voice rumbled low. "Malachi, he's making his move." "He's accusing me of being a mind controller," Diamond said, her hands still over her rifle's components. "That's a career-ending accusation." "More than that, Sergeant," Hesperus corrected. "The Council treats it the same as deploying a planet cracker. They want to end humanity's council seat before we've even gotten comfortable." Another chime sounded, an internal notification from the Peacekeeper Corps personnel database. Diamond opened it. A threat assessment update filed by one educator, Emet. Her potential threat classification now read existential provisional. Diamond stared at the word, then at the disassembled weapon on her bench. Hot anger spiked in her chest. Emet arranged their shared quarters in the council's spire. His belongings occupied his side of the room, aligned perfectly with the station's prescribed magnetic north. Her side showed a functional disarray of gym clothes, datapads, and weapon cleaning kits. He waited until she finished reassembling her rifle before he spoke. "Sergeant, we need to discuss the Deathwalker legends." Diamond looked up from her work, wiping lubricant from her fingers. She scoffed. "You're taking that ghost story seriously?" "It's a valid cultural data point," Emet said. "A recurring mythology archetype found in the databases of 68% of known council species. A bipedal destroyer, a bringer of silent ruin. The descriptions are remarkably consistent." Diamond leaned back in her chair, a faint smile on her lips. "Fine. You want to know about the Deathwalkers? They're us, or rather, they're distorted third-hand accounts of us, filtered through a few thousand years of a galactic telephone game's distortion." Emet's suit hummed. "Explain." "Human history is messy," she said. "Our last major conflict was the Promethean AI uprising. A dispute over organic emotionalism's validity sparked it. The AIs concluded that our emotions posed an existential threat to galactic stability, so they tried to exterminate us." She paused. "They employed code systematic methods, autonomous drone legions, orbital kinetic strikes, nanoplagues. We fought them with their own logic. We created hunter-killer algorithms and counterinsurgency subroutines. We turned entire star systems into computational killboxes. We won by being more methodical, more relentless than the machines we created." She looked at Emet, thinking a detached technological explanation would be more relatable than ground combat stories. Her explanation had the opposite effect. To Emet, a member of a species that resolved its last major conflict through centuries of debate, her calm description of organized species-wide violence horrified him. He registered the cold, dispassionate intent behind her words as an absolute zero wave washing over his sensors. A pirate captain's hot, chaotic rage seemed simple by comparison. This represented the chilling calculus of extermination. His limbs felt numb, his chest-sensitive tympanic membranes went still. "Thank you for your clarification, Sergeant," he whispered. He turned and walked stiffly to his personal terminal. He opened his personal file on Diamond and deleted the previous entry. He created a new one. Threat assessment update. Existential. Confirmed. The second pirate encounter was nearly identical to the first. A distress call, a Centauri freighter, and a different but equally brutish pirate corvette. Diamond opened the channel. "This is Peacekeeper Sergeant Diamond."
"We surrender!"
A strained voice screamed back before she could finish. The ship powered down. This time, Diamond was ready. Before the pirate vessel could initiate its data wipe, she slammed her palm on a console. "Got it. Full registry snapshot." The data scrolled across her screen. The vessel, a decommissioned Class C freighter, registered under the name Stellar Plank. Its last registered owner belonged to a subsidiary of the Cuneiform Interstellar Shipping Conglomerate. Cuneiform? Diamond murmured. Council Malachi species. That's a hell of a coincidence. Coincidence is a statistically improbable narrative construct, Emet said from his station. He observed the proceedings from a distance. A new crew addition, a liaison from the council, stood silently behind him. A Cygnian, a tall avian descendant, his face a mask of smooth, light-absorbing dark feathers. He just stood there, observing, reporting. Diamond ignored them both. 2 pirate ships, both surrendering on sight. One linked to the politician trying to get her removed from the Corps. Thin, but a thread. "I'm filing this report," she said, "and I'm flagging the ship's origin." "A logical course of action," Emet agreed. The Cygnian liaison remained silent, his placid gaze fixed on Diamond. His silent presence weighed on the bridge, a reminder of their suspected status. Hesperus's summons arrived discreetly. "My office, 2200 hours. Come alone." When Diamond arrived, the office had changed. The grand displays were dark. The only light came from glowing artifacts arranged on shelves behind the Admiral's throne. A pulse rifle from the Martian campaign, a battered helmet from the siege of Proxima, and, in a simple frame on the wall, a faded recruiting poster. A stylized soldier stood over a Promethean drone's shattered husk, the text bold and clear. "I'm doing my part." Hesperus spoke with the commander's clipped tone. "Counselor Malachi leads the isolationist bloc," he said. "They believe the Council functioned better before it admitted every species with a tunnel drive. Humanity, with our history and rapid expansion, serves as their perfect scapegoat. They see us as a disruptive element." "So he's framing me to get humanity kicked out," Diamond finished. "He's using the Deathwalker legends against you," Hesperus corrected. "He's confirming a pre-existing bias, a brilliant political move." The throne drifted closer. "I've dedicated my life to the Peacekeeper Corps, Sergeant. The institution is fragile. If Malachi can paint one of our own as a monster from the old tales, he can discredit the entire organization. He can argue that mixing species poses a danger, that we need to return to isolation and suspicion." He fell silent. A panel on his throne slid open, and a small metallic object slid out into his desk. A data chip. "Official channels prevent me from sanctioning an investigation into a sitting council member," Hesperus said, his voice dropping. "But I study history, specifically human history. Your species has a precedent for decisive action when cornered." Diamond picked up the chip. It felt cold and heavy in her hand. "That contains a high-level decryption key from the Cuneiform corporate fleet registries," Hesperus said. "The Council sealed them. Find the link between Malachi and these pirates, Sergeant. Prove this conspiracy." He paused, his primary sensor nodes focusing on her. "I'm betting on the Deathwalker." Diamond closed her fist around the chip. "You've got a funny way of showing it, sir." A low rumble. "I've studied your strategic media archives. The lone hero tales of those who defy empires, of soldiers who adapt through impossible circumstances. I know what a single determined human can do. She left the office with a decryption key in her pocket and the weight of a new expectation. Diamond laid it all out for Emet on the Saw's briefing room display. The pirate ship registries, Council Malachi's political profile, the timeline of the attacks coinciding with Malachi's push for her evaluation. He hires mercenaries, disguises them as pirates, and then has them attack convoys in all patrol sector, she summarized. He knows they'll surrender the moment they see a human. My perfect record gets flagged as abnormal. He leaks fake intel about coercive weapons, and suddenly I'm a pariah, a political hit job. Emet studied the data, his suit's hum lowering to an analytical pitch. The theory was sound, elegant, but he saw a flaw. Your timeline has a discrepancy, Sergeant, he said, his synthesized voice calm. The first pirate vessel, the Crimson Cutlass, was reported scrapped for salvage 20 standard ship days before the first attack. That ship's registry must be false. Diamond frowned, checking the data. He was right. So, they're using ghost ships. A plausible hypothesis, Emet agreed, but difficult to prove. He tapped a few commands into his console. However, if we cross-reference the Stellar Plank's last known maintenance records with the transponder logs, they worked for hours. Diamond's intuitive leaps were tempered by Emet's methodical analysis. She would find a potential connection. He would meticulously verify or disprove it. The Stygian liaison stood silently in the corner, a feathered statue observing their every move. Finally, they used Hesperus's decryption key. A cascade of protected files unlocked. Within minutes, they found it. Recent sales records, buried under layers of corporate obfuscation. Several decommissioned cuneiform freighters, including the two they'd encountered, remained in service, sold for a pittance to a shell corporation headquartered in the Cyclopean Shroud, a volatile nebula known as a mercenary haven. The sector operated under a patchwork of treaties that made it a legal gray area, a perfect place to hide a fleet. There it is, Diamond said, a grim smile on her face. A junior aide in Malachi's office signed the Shell Corporation's charter. Emet looked at the mountain of data, at the clear line connecting the pirates to their political enemy. The dissonant roar of Diamond's biology was still present, but for the first time became background noise. The foreground filled with the clean logic of a solved puzzle. Our next move is evident, Emet said, a new confidence in his voice. We require direct surveillance. Diamond grinned. Now you're talking, educator. They used a routine patrol route as cover, taking the scrap saw on a long, looping trajectory that would bring them to the edge of the Cyclopean Shroud. The Stygian liaison watched their course adjustments, his silence a constant pressure. The journey was long. To break the monotony, Diamond dug out an old-fashioned set of playing cards from her personal locker. Ever play poker? She asked, shuffling a deck with a practiced snap. The term is new to me, Emet replied. It's a game, she said, dealing 2 cards to him and 2 to herself. Strategy, deception, reading your opponent. His inexperience showed. Every time he was dealt a good hand, his suit's regular hum would pitch up slightly. Every time he had nothing, the hum would dip into a flat tone. Diamond folded another hand, raking in a small pile of ration chips. You're broadcasting your entire hand, Emet, she said. Then she paused, frowning. Wait, you just folded. How did you know I would raise? Emet's suited form went still. I registered the flickering of decision intent, a neurological precursor to action. With most beings, it's a chaotic distraction. With you, it is sharp, unsettlingly clear. Diamond leaned back, a slow, calculating smile spreading across her face. Huh. So you read my intent to play the cards, even if the cards themselves are hidden. That's where the bluff comes in. You act strong when you're weak. You make your opponent believe something that isn't true. The concept was foreign to Emet's thinking. To his senses, which registered only direct intent, deception was a paradox. Why would one deliberately project a falsehood? To win, Diamond said simply. Or to survive? They talked as they played. She told him about Earth, about the smell of rain on hot asphalt, and the illogical joy of watching a ball game. For the first time, Emmett's questions shifted from professional protocol to curiosity. He asked about her family, her training, about the scar that bisected her left eyebrow. His questions were still formal, but tinged with a desire to understand the being beside him, not just the threat she represented. He still registered the chaotic energy thrumming off her, the biological signature of a predator. But now, filtered through their shared goal, it felt less like a threat and more like a shield. The scrap saw drifted at the edge of the cyclopean shroud, its hull plating cooled to match deep space's background radiation. The nebula was a breathtaking and treacherous swirl of incandescent gas and dark matter where sensors became unreliable. Their long-range scanners, pushed to their limits, finally got a hit, a small, hollowed-out asteroid deep within the nebula's densest part, spewing encrypted, high-bandwidth communications. The pirate base. Their encryption is military-grade, Diamond said, studying the data on her screen. Breaking that from this range exceeds all capabilities. A direct approach invites failure, Emet stated, monitoring the asteroid's sensor grid. No, we go quiet, Diamond said. She brought up a schematic of a microprobe, no bigger than her fist. We'll launch this on a low-velocity trajectory. It's designed to mimic an asteroid fragment's thermal and metallic signature. It'll drift right up to their comms relay, latch on, and give us a direct tap. The launch was perfect. The microprobe tumbled through space, indistinguishable from the millions of other rocks. They watched its slow journey on their screens. It docked with the asteroid's comm relay with a silent, magnetic click. Suddenly, the speakers crackled to life.
Another week of this and I'm going to go space mad,
A gruff voice complained.
This is the cushiest, most boring job I've ever had. We get paid to fly out, look scary, and then run away the second the two-legger shows up on the view screen.
Another voice, high-pitched, chimed in. Quit your whining. The pay is triple standard mercenary rates. Kiniform wants a show. We give him a show. A third voice, crisp and authoritative, cut through their chatter. It belonged to the aide they'd identified from the Shell Corporation's charter.
Maintain comms discipline. The plan is proceeding. The Council is moving to suspend the humans' duties. One more incident should be enough to trigger a full vote for expulsion. Stick to the plan. Malachi is playing for results. Keep your commentary private.
Diamond's fingers moved across her console, recording everything. The voices, the call signs, the metadata. It was all there.
We've got him,
she breathed, a triumphant grin spreading across her face.
We've got the bastard.
They plotted a course out of the nebula. The evidence secured in 3 separate memory cores. As Diamond prepared to engage the tunnel drive, Emet noticed an anomaly.
Sergeant,
he said, his voice sharp.
The Signian liaison. He's transmitting a coded message.
Diamond's head snapped. The Signian stood by a secondary comms panel, his slender talons on the controls. He was sending a short burst transmission off his regular reporting schedule. And all clear. An instant later, proximity alarms shrieked through the bridge. 2 ships dropped out of a tunnel directly in their path, their forms sharp and silver against the nebula's swirling colors. They were warships, bearing the shifting fluid design of the cuneiform fleet, Counselor Malachi's personal security detail. Weapon ports slid open along their hulls.
All channels,
Diamond barked, her hands a blur on the helm controls.
Broadcast the recording, everything we just copied. Put it on a repeating loop across all Council emergency frequencies.
Emmet's fingers flew across his own consoles, his earlier anxiety replaced by a cold focus.
Broadcasting.
The enemy ship stayed silent. Their purpose was to erase the evidence and the witnesses. Plasma bolts seared past Scrapsaw's cockpit. Diamond threw the ship into a hard drive, the inertial dampeners groaning. They were in a high-speed chase through the nebula's asteroid fields. The little patrol craft was nimble, but the cuneiform warships were faster and better armed. Every juke was met with a calculated volley of fire. They were being herded. Emet was strapped into his chair, his suit's regulators screaming.
The air vibrated with hostile intent, the focused, predatory thoughts of the enemy pilots crashing against his senses. "I can't get a lock," Diamond yelled over the scream of the engines. "They're anticipating everything I do." Emmett's mind raced. He registered their intent, a layer beneath their surface thoughts, the surge of confidence before a pilot committed to a firing solution, the subtle shift in focus as a gunner acquired a new target. "That thing you do," Diamond snapped, yanking the stick hard to port. "The intent reading. Focus on them. Tell me what they're going to do before they do it." Something inside him clicked. He closed his optical shutters, filtering out the visual chaos. He focused on the empathetic storm as a data source. His breathing evened out. His voice, when it came, was clear and calm. "The lead pilot is overconfident. He's committing a starboard dive to cut off our escape vector. Now!" Diamond reacted instantly. She slammed the port thrusters, sending the scrap saw into a tight corkscrew into the opposite direction. A plasma volley sliced through the space they had occupied a second before. He became her co-pilot. "The wingman is moving to flank us. He intends to pin us against that large asteroid cluster," Emet called out. "I see it," Diamond gritted out. "He's targeting our primary drive. He believes we'll accelerate past him." "What's his emotional state?" "Arrogant," Emet said. "He views us as a negligible threat." "Good," Diamond said, a dangerous glint in her eyes. "Let's use that." Their combined skills made the scrap saw an impossible target. They were a fusion of human reflex and Volrokian precognition, weaving through wreckage and returning fire with an uncanny timing. They were cornered. The cuneiform warships bracketed them, their path forward blocked by a dense wall of rock and ice. Diamond's gaze darted across her console. "I have an idea," she said, her voice dangerously calm. "It's risky. Our survival probability is low," Emet stated flatly. "I am amenable to risk." "Venting the secondary plasma conduit on my mark," she said. "It'll look like a catastrophic engine failure on their sensors. It'll also blind their opticals for a few seconds." "A bluff," Emet murmured, the lesson from their poker game acquiring a deadly context. "Count on it," she said. 3, 2, 1, mark. She slammed a shielded control. A torrent of superheated incandescent plasma erupted from the scrap saw's aft section. On the cuneiform ship's sensors, it registered as an uncontrolled energy flare, a dying reactor's signature. The flare washed over their forward viewports, overloading their sensors for 3 crucial seconds. In that window, Diamond pushed the helm forward. She accelerated directly toward the lead warship. Magnetic docking clamps fired from the scrap saw's underbelly, slamming onto the warship's hull with a deafening clang that reverberated through their own ship. They were attached. "Stay here," she ordered Emet, unstrapping herself. "Keep that broadcast running." He met her gaze, and his biosignature was a clear, steady signal of trust. "Understood, Sergeant." She grabbed her pulse rifle from its rack, slapped a fresh power cell into it, and headed for the airlock. The breach was a concussive roar. A shaped charge blew the cuneiform warship's outer hull inward. Diamond was through the opening before the shrapnel stopped flying. She moved through the warship's corridors. The ship was designed for cuneiforms, whose reconfigurable bodies preferred wide, stable platforms. A junction ahead crackled with an automated defense grid. She fired 2 shots from her rifle, shattering the power conduit at the far end. The grid sputtered and died. She continued forward. She used paralytic stun rounds. A cuneiform crewman rounded a corner. 2 shots, a tight grouping to the central torso. The cuneiform's fluid sac seized, and it collapsed to the deck, paralyzed. Junction clear. Move to the next point of cover. Slice the corridor door's control panel. Kick it open. 2 more crewmen. 4 shots. 2 more paralyzed bodies. Her speed and ferocity overwhelmed them. The cuneiform crew were security officers, unprepared for a one-woman boarding party. They faced a creature that moved with unnatural speed. She reached the bridge in under 3 minutes. The blast door was sealed. She placed a limpet mine on its seam. The explosion buckled the door from its housing. She stepped through the smoke, rifle raised. The bridge officers stared, their facial membranes rippling with disbelief. They saw the 2-legged silhouette framed by smoke and fire, a pulse rifle held steady. The legend was real. She neutralized the 5 officers on the bridge with 10 shots. She strolled to the helm, disabled the ship's weapons and engines, and activated the internal comms. "This is Peacekeeper Sergeant Diamond," she said, her voice calm, echoing through the now silent warship. "Your vessel is disabled. Your bridge crew is incapacitated. Surrender and you will be treated according to Council law." After a moment of silence, the shipwide comms filled with terrified acknowledgments. From the Scrapsaw's cockpit, still clamped to the warship's hull, Emet watched the second cuneiform ship. Its partner was crippled. The damning broadcast of Malachai's conspiracy echoed on every one of its channels. After a moment of hesitation, it turned and fled into the nebula's swirling chaos. The Galactic Council's Grand Chamber was in an uproar. The broadcast from the Scrapsaw had played on every public and private channel for a full hour. The evidence was irrefutable, but Counselor Malachi was a master of political theater. He stood at the central podium, his fluid-filled body sacs pulsing.
"A fabrication, a desperate, violent act by a rogue agent who has fallen under some forbidden mental influence. The Deathwalker herself created this evidence to slander my name."
Admiral Hesperus presented the Scrapsaw's black box data, his voice a low, vibrating counterpoint to Malachi's histrionics. The data corroborated the unprovoked attack and the ship signatures. Damning, but circumstantial. Then Adjudicator Emet stepped forward. He moved to the testimony circle, his slender, suited form small in the immense chamber. He stood in silence as the entire assembly's attention fell upon him. He gave his testimony, his synthesized voice clear. He recounted the events, the Shell Corporation's discovery, the ambush. He spoke of the evidence they had uncovered. Malachi scoffed.
"The words of a compromised partner. He's under our mental control."
Emet turned his smooth, featureless face toward the cuneiform counselor. "Under Article 47 of the Council's legal framework," Emet said, his voice ringing with a new authority, "a certified adjudicator's empathetic testimony is considered evidence of motive and intent." The chamber quieted. "I extend my senses now," Emet declared, "and I register Counsel Malachi's psychic signature. I register his guilt. I register the cold, murderous intent he held for Sergeant Diamond and myself. And I register his profound fear. A fear of the truth, eclipsing his fear of the Deathwalker." As Malachi stood rigid, Hesperus gestured to the Cygnian liaison, who was escorted to the circle. The Cygnian presented his comms log, showing a direct, encrypted order from Malachi's chief of staff. "Confirmed targets acquired. Signal when clear." The combination of irrefutable data, empathetic testimony, and a corroborating witness was absolute. As armed guards escorted the motionless Malachi from the chamber, another counselor, a Lumina, whose form was woven light filaments within a containment suit, murmured to an aide. "The Deathwalker warnings, the ancient text. They spoke of a being that walked on two legs and brought conflicts to an end with terrible efficiency." The counselor stared at the spot where Diamond stood, observing the proceedings. "All this time, we thought they were talking about a monster. They were talking about soldiers." Back in Hesperus's office, the nebula outside the viewport seemed calmer. The Admiral's containment throne hummed with a placid frequency. He produced a glass bottle filled with an amber liquid from a hidden compartment. "Scourge," he vibrated, pouring 3 glasses. He slid one toward Diamond and one toward Emet. "A Terran tradition for a victory well earned." He informed them that Malachi's entire faction was being investigated. Humanity's probationary status was upgraded to full membership. Their position was secure. "Adjudicator," Hesperus said, turning his attention to Emet, "your testimony was exemplary. I've taken the liberty of arranging a transfer for you, should you desire it. A quiet post in the Archives Division, far from combat." Emet looked at the glass of scotch, then at Diamond.
She watched him, her expression neutral. "Thank you for the offer, Admiral," Emet said, the hum from his suit settling into a low, steady tone. "But I find the current data stream compelling. I will continue the observation." A slow smile spread across Diamond's face. She reached for the nutrient dispenser and produced a steaming mug. She slid it across the desk toward Emet, taking the untouched scotch glass out of his way. The mug contained a pale, fragrant liquid. "Herbal tea," she said. "Figured we'd start you on the weak stuff." Emet picked up the mug with a steady hand. He took a sip, the warm liquid a pleasant counterpoint to the office's scrubbed atmosphere. He met her gaze over the mug's rim. For the first time since they met, his suit's regulator hum was placid in her presence. It was the quiet, steady hum of a partnership tempered by conflict and a misunderstanding resolved.